Welcome back. I hope you've been practicing your purl stitch. Today we're going to talk about the relationship between purl and knit stitches and counting rows and basic things like that. So your work may look something like this because you practiced your knit stitch and then, well, you're not at that part yet, so then you practiced your purl stitch. I did 10 rows knit, 10 rows purl, and they look pretty much exactly the same, except for like a little part right here. And the reason for that is that knit and purl are actually the same stitch. Knit is considered the front of the stitch and purl is considered the back. So when you're knitting and you're purling, you're controlling which side shows up on the fabric. That may be really confusing for you. But let me show you an example. This is stockinette stitch. This is kind of what we consider like a classic knit stitch. It's what you think of when you see like a knitted sweater and something like that. And this is the front side that's shown to the public, and this is the back side that you kind of hide inside the sweater. In some sweaters it's the opposite, but generally that's how it goes. Now you'll notice that this is purl and this is knit. The knit stitches are the smooth, kind of up and down ones. The purls are the bumpy, sideways ones. But they are the exact same stitch. This is the front side, this is the back side. Pretty crazy, huh? Now, you get stockinette. I'll show you how you get the stockinette stitch. So far you've been doing one stitch for every single row. Well, again, you're overusing the word stitch. I just don't know how else to say it because that's how knitters talk. But what we're going to do now is you're going to knit when you see knit and purl when you see purl. What I mean by that is on the purl side, you purl. So I've done 10 rows in stockinette, and we're just going to continue that. So I'm purling on the purl side. And turn it around. Alright, now I see knit, so I'm going to knit on the knit side. What? And you get a continuation of that pattern. Now, what if I were to do the opposite? What if I were to start knitting on the purl side? You would get a row of smooth stitches. Let me show you what that looks like. I don't know if you can see that very well, but you can see these kind of smooth up and down stitches at the top, right above the bumpy ones. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. Yeah, there we go. The lighting's a little better that way. And on the opposite side, because purls are going to show up on the opposite side where you knit, you have all these smooth stitches, and now you have these purls. They really stand out. So I know it's a bit confusing, but don't worry if you don't get it. The more you practice, you'll get it. Alright, and we're going to talk about one other kind of stitch here, and it's called ribbing, and that's where you knit one, purl one, which is a type of ribbing. There's different types. Ribbing is basically just stretchy. It's what you see at the end of sweaters and hats. So what I'm doing is I'm alternating. I'm doing knit, purl, to the end. Knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. Now you can kind of see these alternating stitches. So we start off, here's a knit, there's a purl, here's a knit, there's a purl, here's a knit, there's a purl. Alright. And if and so we're going to put the knit on top of the knit. So that was a knit stitch. We're doing a knit stitch on top of it. Here is a purl stitch. So we're going to put a purl on top of it. You can see the new one right there. And that's how you get ribbing, which is stretchy, and it's kind of fun. It's not tight. I wouldn't say it's tight. It just kind of clings to you. So I'll add another row because it's hard to tell how it can be kind of stretchy just from 2 rows. And then if I take my needle out, you can see it kind of clings to itself. You can see it kind of pulls the fabric in, and if you add more on top, it pulls it even more in. So that's great for like a hat or something you want to be kind of pulled in. Now the thing about this stockinette stitch here is it's very curly. Now this garter stitch down here, this is great for scarves because it doesn't curl in on itself. I wouldn't recommend this for the middle of a scarf because it'll really shrink your work, make it like that big when you meant it to be that big. Here, I'll show you how, okay, so see how it's kind of curling in on itself? Yeah, the stockinette does that. So if you do a scarf entirely in stockinette, it's going to make a little tube. So I recommend garter stitch or seed stitch, or you know, something like that for scarves. Okay, let me get these back on the needle. By the way, taking stitches off the needle isn't that big a deal if you have only 10 stitches, but if you have like more than 20, yeah, be very, very careful. Try to save them. If you need to use your needle, put like a stick or something in there to save them so that they don't get shrunken into the fabric, which is really annoying. Okay, now we're going to do seed stitch, which starts out the same as ribbing. You knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. Seed stitch is important because it, well, you'll see in a minute. Okay, so you can pause and get caught up. I've got seed stitch, which starts out the same as ribbing, knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. Now you go to the other side. Seed stitch is where you put a purl on top of a knit and a knit on top of a purl. So we start out with this nice smooth knit stitch, and what we're going to do is pull the yarn toward the front, go in with our working needle in front like you practiced, and you're going to push it through just like that. And then with the purl, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to, you know, we've got a purl stitch right here. If you can see it, it's right there. And we're going to knit on top of it. Yep, there you go. So we just added a purl on top of a knit and a knit on top of a purl. And that's seed stitch, where you do the opposite of the first row. And it makes this nice kind of poppy pattern. It's important to master because you need to learn which side of the stitch to work with. Generally, you want to work with the side that's closest to you. Sometimes it can be hard to tell, but you want to, like, there's two sides to this stitch. You know, you don't want to work with this side, which sometimes people do. You want to work with the one that's closest to your needle. So we're going to do a purl on top of a knit stitch. You're going to grab that side that's closest to your needle, go in through that way, push it through. And same here, you can see that it's hard to see the other side on a, there. If you pull it this way, you can see that this side is much closer to the needle than this side. So that's the side you're going to go in through. Oh wait, sorry for knitting. So you're going to go in through that way and pull it through. And you're going to want to make sure that you pick the side that's closest to the needle, because otherwise it twists the stitch. You can kind of tell it's a little bit twisted, and it makes your work tighter, which, you know, some people actually really like. I find it harder to work with, honestly. I think it's very annoying to work with that when it's too tight. So just something to be careful of, be aware. You know, it can be a tool to make your work tighter if you like that. If not, then don't do it. So we've only done 2 rows, but that's basically what seed stitch looks like. It's kind of popping, kind of alternate popping. It's similar to the garter, but a little bit, it's more alternating. So that's really fun to do. All right, join me in the next one where we talk about binding off.